Do you know why your reactions are not fully yours? What happens when your thoughts follow a script you never wrote? If you want your mind steady and free, listen carefully. You are told arguments are about facts, yet losses happen before facts appear. The real contest begins earlier, where meaning is shaped and rules are placed. The first gate is attention. The second gate is definition. The third is proof. If someone captures these gates, your intelligence becomes fuel for their control. You feel you are choosing, yet the choices carry hidden strings and weights. The strings are frames, the weights are emotions, and the knots are assumptions. This is not magic. This is a repeatable system that rewards pressure. You can learn to see the system, and you can learn counters. Begin by noticing what is set before you, even open your mouth. Your mind lands on a stage already built, with lights already pointing. That stage is the frame, and the lights are the prime judgments. Whoever decides the frame quietly decides what counts as winning today. You sense this when you feel rushed, cornered, or oddly apologetic early. That sensation is a signal, not weakness. Treat it like a fire alarm. Ask yourself a quiet question. What are we truly evaluating right now? If your answer sounds vague or moral without metrics, the frame is stolen. Stolen frames use vague categories and loaded words that sound responsible and kind. They also hide slippery definitions that move whenever you get close. You try to answer and the target shifts and you look unsure. Uncertainty becomes their exhibit, then your calm effort becomes their silent evidence. The secret manual hides in these little moves that feel like air. Air carries smell without weight, and these moves carry control without shape. So learn the first move they use. It is called frame seizure. Frame seizure defines the subject, the stakes, and the level of analysis. All three layers shape your path like tracks under a fast train. The subject tells the brain where to look and what to ignore. The stakes tell the body how much to fear and how fast. The level of analysis decides whether intention or behavior gets measured today. Frame seizure usually starts with a soft claim that seems undisputable and caring. You nod to stay reasonable, then that single nod becomes a binding contract. From there, every sentence you speak serves a role in their script. You start defending meaning inside their language, which is a quiet surrender. The practical effect is cruel. Your cognitive bandwidth drops and short answers rise. Short answers are easy to reframe as confusion or hidden guilt. Now you feel behind, and being behind pushes you toward careless concessions. Their next step is to place a leading question dressed as neutrality. Answering yes or no accepts the stuffed assumption hiding in the question. You have seen this shape, yet you rarely named it with precision. Learn to name it, because naming gives you levers you can pull. The lever is meta-clarity, not cleverness and not verbal speed. Say this internally first. The question contains a built-in claim. Then ask aloud, what is the exact claim behind your question? Notice the shift. Your body slows, your breath deepens, and space appears. Space gives you time for definitions, and definitions give you independence. Do not rush to argue evidence before defining the exact thing measured. Evidence without definition becomes fog, and fog favors whoever wanted confusion. Fog also invites volume, and volume invites defensive tone and scattered thinking. You will feel an itch to fix your image quickly and repeatedly. The itch is a trap, because image repair strengthens their frame without effort. You break the trap by returning to structure, not performance and not apology. Structure is simple: claim, evidence, relevance, time window, and decision rule. Write it if possible, or speak it slowly in the same order. Hold each piece separate, like tagged boxes. Do not let them merge. Merging is how ambiguity multiplies, and ambiguity always favors the faster voice. The faster voice presses you into answering two questions at once. Two questions at once guarantees one careless acceptance you never intended. This is the first reason you begin losing arguments you should not lose. You are not out-reasoned. You are out-framed, then hurried, then exhausted. Exhaustion feels like agreement because relief masquerades as resolution in the body. Do not accept relief as proof of clarity. Keep the boxes separate. When you notice frame seizure, freeze the motion and ask for precise definitions. Ask for examples and counterexamples. Both must fit the proposed definition cleanly. A definition that excludes all counterexamples unfairly is a painted wall, not truth. A definition that includes opposing examples is a leaky bucket, not truth. Neither wall nor bucket deserves your acceptance under pressure or under charm. You also need a clean stance for your own framing without aggression. State your evaluation path briefly, then invite agreement on the path itself. If the path is fair, the outcome can be negotiated without distortion. If the path is refused, you just received valuable diagnostic information immediately. The refusal shows the goal was control, not clarity, and not resolution. You must hold your center when this refusal appears because pressure will rise. Pressure is not random. It is the second move in the system. Before we reach pressure stacking, you need deeper tools against frame seizure itself. One indispensable tool is reframing through measurable criteria and aligned incentives. Translate moral adjectives into behaviors that can be counted within a window. Replace vague everyone with identified stakeholders and explicit contexts and time limits. Replace always and never with frequencies within a specific sample and setting. Replace intention speculation with observable patterns, repeated at least 3 times across contexts. When you do this, emotional heat lowers and reasoning climbs back home. You may still face pushback, often disguised as care or urgency or duty. Remember the first gate. Attention. Decide where your noticing will land right now. Choose not to notice provocation for a few breaths. Notice structure instead. Structure is calmer than tone, and calmer minds perceive options you forgot. When options expand, fear shrinks, and fear reduction weakens control mechanisms immediately. To reinforce this shift, adopt 3 internal questions during any difficult exchange. First question: what exact frame is active and who benefits from it? Second question: what definition would make both agreement and disagreement equally possible? Third question: what minimal evidence would change my view and their view? Asking these questions silently builds a habit of intellectual backbone under pressure. Backbone without aggression feels like peace to you and friction to manipulation. That friction is healthy because comfort supports fog, and clarity demands resistance. Expect common counter-moves like moral mirroring and crisis language and status appeal. Moral mirroring claims you violate the same standard you requested 2 minutes earlier. Crisis language declares immediate harm unless you concede within a short window. Status appeal invokes authority or popularity as proof without engaging the defined criteria. Do not fight these on the surface. Return to the structure you built. Repeat the evaluation path. Invite alignment, and pause until they either join or refuse. The pause is not silence of surrender. It is silence of sovereignty. If they escalate volume, let your cadence slow further and simplify phrasing. Short, clear sentences with stable pace reduce their ability to hook your nerves. Nerves untangled give you verbal endurance, and endurance outlasts theatrical pressure every time. Your presence becomes the evidence that urgency is a tactic, not a truth. You can also deploy the lens switch, a precise shift of level. Move between outcome level, process level, and principle level with deliberate control. Outcome level asks what measurable results are at stake within the window. Process level asks how decisions are being made and by whose rules. Principle level asks which values apply and how conflicts between values get resolved. Most manipulative frames wobble when you force movement across these 3 levels. They rely on keeping you stuck defending one level while they roam freely. Do not chase them. Make them choose a level and finish it. Finishing means defining the claim, checking disconfirming evidence, and agreeing on decision rules. They will prefer drift because drift preserves ambiguity and drains your cognitive fuel. Your antidote is closure discipline, where each claim ends before the next begins. Closure discipline feels slow at first, then it becomes a strong habit. Once you practice it, you will sense frame theft within a minute. You will catch yourself before agreeing to a claim you never endorsed. This is how the first move loses oxygen and your clarity returns. Yet clarity provokes the next move because control rarely accepts quiet defeat. Control seeks momentum, and momentum requires speed and noise and crowded focus. That is why you often feel the tempo spike after you gain footing. The spike is not random discomfort. It is designed to overload your working memory. Working memory is a small table where only a few items can stand. Overload knocks items off the table and you forget what still lacks proof. Then you concede to end fatigue, and fatigue becomes their clean victory. You will learn counters for this spike, including paced breathing and tempo rules. You will also learn how to extract single testable predictions from vague statements. Predictions defeat fog because the future arrives and either confirms or rejects. You will ask for the smallest prediction that would make you change course. You will return the same request. What prediction would make you change course? If the answer avoids specificity, you are not in truth-seeking territory. You are inside power-seeking territory, where ambiguity is armor against accountability. Recognizing territory prevents self-blame and saved energy fuels careful choices. Careful choices protect integrity without self-sacrifice, which is the true win. The goal is not victory through domination. The goal is sovereignty with clarity. So far you learned the gate model, the stage of frames and counters. You learned to name frame seizure, to build structure, and to demand closure. You learned to convert adjectives into behaviors within windows you define openly. You learned the lens switch and the 3 levels that force consistency. You learned to pause with sovereignty and to protect your cognitive table. This knowledge is enough to hold ground against many subtle traps already. Yet there is a deeper layer, where pressure becomes architecture, not noise. There, speed is used like a drug that hijacks your nervous system. Timers appear, audiences are invoked, and cascades of claims flood your attention. Your instincts accelerate, but acceleration is precisely what collapses careful reasoning. The pattern has a name you will recognize in your muscles and breath. It is the engine behind rushed concessions and regretful apologies and hollow peace. It turns silence into guilt and calm into indifference and precision into cruelty. You have felt this engine push you toward words you never meant. You can dismantle it, but only if you see each lever clearly. Are you ready to expose the structure of pressure stacking before it takes your voice again? Do you know why your thoughts speed up when someone else stays calm? What if the fastest voice is not the smartest voice? If you want control over pressure, slow down before it owns you. You already felt the first system, frame seizure, where meaning is stolen before debate begins. The next system is harsher because it does not change ideas. It changes your nervous system. This move is called pressure stacking, a psychological overload that forces you to lose clarity and accept loss just to breathe again. You mistake the defeat for agreement, but it is only relief from tension you never created. Pressure stacking is not random emotion, it is a sequence, repeatable and predictable. Once you see the sequence, the spell breaks and speed turns useless. Pressure stacking has 3 pillars: time pressure, social pressure, and cognitive pressure. Each pillar attacks a different part of your mind, but all 3 hit at once. Time pressure attacks your calm. Social pressure attacks your self-image. Cognitive pressure attacks your memory. Time pressure is the illusion of urgency. The manipulator uses phrases like "right now," before it is too late, or "we do not have time to think." These phrases are not about time. They are about obedience. The goal is to link delay with danger, so silence feels like guilt and thinking feels like betrayal. Your heartbeat rises, your breathing shortens, your brain shifts from logic to survival. In survival mode, you do not analyze. You comply because compliance looks like safety. Social pressure is the illusion of consensus. Statements like "everyone sees it," "people are already talking," or "nobody agrees with you," shrink your autonomy. You stop checking truth. You start checking belonging. Humans fear isolation more than error, so you defend your place in the group instead of your position in the argument. You forget the claim. You start proving you are not selfish, not rude, not cold. You begin fighting an accusation that was never spoken, only implied. Cognitive pressure is the overload of mental bandwidth. It is done through rapid topic switching, stacked accusations, or layered questions without pause. Your working memory can hold only a few elements at once, and pressure stacking floods it. You chase one point, then another appears, then a third, until you forget what started the debate. Once you forget the origin, you lose the frame, then the structure, then the ability to measure truth. The overload makes you agree to close the conversation, not because they are right, but because you are tired. The manipulator then uses your exhaustion as proof of your weakness, and your weakness as proof that they were right. The loop closes, and you walk away thinking you lost because you are not strong enough. You were never weak. You were overloaded by design. But pressure stacking only works if you move at their speed. Speed destroys clarity, so your first counter is tempo control. Tempo control means you speak slower than the attack. Your pace rewrites the rhythm of the interaction. Your calm tone forces their nervous system to adjust or expose their urgency. Next is separation. Never respond to stacked claims as one unit. Break them into single lines and choose the first one only. Say, "We will close this point before moving to the next." If they interrupt, repeat the sentence with the same pace. The repetition is not for them. It is for your brain. It stabilizes your focus. Another counter is evidence freeze. When the pressure rises, ask for a measurable claim, not an emotional story. Emotional stories are used to blur. Measurable claims are used to anchor. Ask what exactly happened, when, how often, witnessed by whom. Pressure stacking hates precision because precision removes fog. There is also the breath rule, 4 in, 6 out, repeated for 2 cycles before you answer. Longer exhale signals safety to the body, and safety restores cognitive range. When your breath slows, your working memory expands, and their rush loses effect. Remember this truth. Pressure stacking is not meant to convince you. It is meant to exhaust you. You do not need stronger arguments. You need stronger oxygen and slower tempo. When the tempo breaks, their advantage dies. But some manipulators escalate further when tempo control works. They drop logic and switch to emotional accusation, because emotion bypasses structure. They say things like, "You do not care," "You always make everything difficult," or "You act like a victim." None of these sentences answer the original claim, but they convert the conversation into identity defense. Once you defend identity, the argument resets under their control. Your counter is identity refusal. Say, "Identity is not the topic, stick to the claim. Do not defend your character. Do not fix your image. Do not justify intent." The more you defend identity, the deeper you sink into their frame. Identity attacks lose power when you respond like this. If the claim is true, evidence will show it. So let us stay with evidence. The calm tone creates an invisible mirror, making their attack look childish and exposed. Pressure stacking collapses when the target refuses to hurry, refuses to defend identity, and refuses to multitask. You are not fighting the person, you are fighting the pace. One more rule: when 3 claims appear in one breath, answer none. Say, "Choose one and we will handle that." If they refuse to choose, you already won because they exposed the game. But pressure stacking is not just speed, it is also confusion disguised as urgency. To dismantle confusion, you need a weapon called single variable isolation. Isolate one variable, one claim, one timeline, one outcome. If they resist isolation, they resist clarity. Resistance to clarity is the signature of manipulation. Never forget that. You now understand the second move, but something deeper hides underneath. Pressure stacking prepares the mind for the third and most dangerous move, the moment when logic collapses and you start proving innocence instead of truth. That shift is not accidental, it is engineered. What happens when you are forced to prove a negative you never claimed? What happens when the rules of proof flip against you in silence? Are you ready to expose the final move, the one that wins arguments without winning logic? Do you know why you start defending yourself even when you did nothing? What if the argument is designed to make you prove the impossible? If you want to stay untangled, learn how the rules secretly flip. You have already seen 2 moves, frame seizure and pressure stacking. But the third move is the most silent, the most effective, and the most exhausting. This is the move that makes intelligent people look confused, guilty, or speechless. It does not attack your logic. It attacks the burden of proof. The name of this move is burden shifting. Burden shifting is the art of forcing you to prove what you never claimed. It is a psychological trap where the manipulator makes you defend a negative, something that cannot be proven, cannot be measured, and cannot be completed. Once you enter that trap, the debate is already lost. Not because you are wrong, but because the rules have been rewritten while you were still speaking. The trap begins with a vague claim that sounds like truth but lacks evidence. Instead of proving the claim, the manipulator says, "If it is not true, prove it." You step into defense thinking you just need to explain once. But every explanation becomes evidence that you are trying too hard. The more you defend, the more suspicious you look, because the frame has already declared you the accused. Here is the hidden structure of burden shifting. 1. The claim is made without proof. 2. The claim is treated as true unless you disprove it. 3. The demand for disproof has no clear finish line. 4. The debate becomes about your ability to defend, not about their ability to prove. You are no longer discussing reality. You are stuck proving your innocence. Examples of how burden shifting sounds. If you are not hiding anything, why are you calm? Prove you are not selfish. Prove you did not mean it. If you are right, why do people feel hurt? Explain why everyone else sees it differently. Notice the pattern. The burden is no longer on the person making the claim. It is now on you, the target, to disprove every possibility they invent. And because possibilities are endless, you can never finish defending. Your mental energy drains, not because the argument is strong, but because the claim is shapeless, and shapeless things cannot be defeated. There is also a deeper twist. When you defend, you accept the position of the accused. The mind of the listener automatically assumes you must have something to hide, because innocent people are expected to stay calm, not defend. You are now fighting psychology, not logic. Burden shifting also works through moral inversion. The manipulator says, if you refuse to defend, it means you agree. So silence is guilt, disagreement is aggression, and defense is proof of guilt. Every path leads back to their conclusion. The trap is complete, but the secret manual has counters. The first counter is proof reversal. Instead of defending, return the burden where it belongs. Say this calmly: you made the claim, so you provide the evidence. Or I will answer after you prove the claim is real, or your statement needs proof. Not my apology. Do not try to sound clever. Sound precise, because precision cancels emotional traps. The second counter is finish line demand. Ask what exact proof would satisfy you. If they cannot define it, you expose that the goal is not truth but exhaustion. Undefined proof means infinite defense, and infinite defense means silent defeat. The third counter is negative refusal. Never prove a negative, because negatives are bottomless. State it clearly: I will not prove what cannot be proven. The claim needs evidence first. The fourth counter is separation of claim and character. When they say, explain why people think you are wrong, reply, explain how that proves the claim itself. Force them back to the structure, not the emotion. The fifth counter is pattern exposure. Say, you are shifting the burden, and I do not accept that rule. Naming the move breaks the illusion of fairness, and illusions need silence to survive. Remember this: burden shifting works only when you accept the position of the accused. If you refuse that position, the game collapses. But the manipulator has one more hidden layer. When proof reversal fails, they destroy the ground of proof itself. They say things like, truth is not always visible, or feelings are proof enough, or you cannot measure everything, so your logic is cold and uncaring. This is the final evolution of burden shifting, where facts are declared limited and emotion becomes unquestionable evidence. You cannot disprove feelings, so the argument becomes unwinnable by design. Your only defense is boundary declaration. You say feelings are valid, but they are not proof. The moment you separate emotion from evidence, the fog begins to clear. Burden shifting is not meant to convince you. It is meant to make you surrender just to escape the loop. The loop is the real weapon, not the claim. You now understand the third move, but the system is not complete yet, because the most dangerous trap is not logical, not emotional, but psychological conditioning. What happens when you are not trapped in one argument, but trained across many arguments to respond exactly how they want? What happens when your reactions become predictable without you knowing? What happens when control is no longer in the words, but in your reflexes? Are you ready to learn how manipulators install patterns inside your mind so you lose before the next argument even begins? Do you know why you react the same way every time? Even when you promise yourself you will stay calm. What if the argument you are in today was already won yesterday? If you want real freedom, you must see the trap that happens before words. The first three moves were active control. Frame seizure takes your meaning. Pressure stacking takes your clarity. Burden shifting takes your innocence. But the fourth layer is not active control. It is passive conditioning, the silent programming of your reflexes long before the next argument begins. This move does not attack your logic or your confidence. It attacks your predictability. If a manipulator can predict your reaction, they no longer need to win the debate, because you will play your role automatically. This move is called reaction training. Reaction training is not one event. It is a sequence of repeated emotional setups. Each setup teaches your nervous system a rule, and once the rule is installed, you obey it without thinking. You are not controlled by force. You are controlled by expectation. The manipulator does not need to silence you. They just need to train you to silence yourself. Here is how reaction training works. 1. They trigger a specific emotion. 2. They punish one type of reaction. 3. They reward a different reaction. 4. The pattern repeats until you react the way they prefer. And because the pattern is scattered across many situations, you never realize it is one training loop. Example: every time you defend yourself calmly, they accuse you of being cold or detached. You feel misunderstood, so next time you try to sound warmer, warm tone becomes your new default, and calm clarity feels risky. Example: every time you express emotion, they say you are overreacting or being dramatic. You learn to mute emotion, to look stable, to avoid accusation. Now they can provoke you without resistance, because silence became your safety. Example: every time you ask for proof, they say you are attacking or being insensitive. You stop asking because asking costs peace. Now they can make any claim they want, and you no longer demand evidence. You were not convinced. You were conditioned. The real danger is this: reaction training does not feel like control. It feels like self-improvement. You think you are becoming calmer, more mature, more understanding, but you are becoming easier to control, easier to predict, easier to defeat. Reaction training installs 3 reflexes. Reflex 1, avoid conflict even when you are right. Reflex 2, explain yourself even when you owe no explanation. Reflex 3, protect the other person's comfort more than your own clarity. Once these reflexes exist, The manipulator does not need to argue. They just need to signal the emotion that activates the reflex, and you will react on autopilot. The worst part, reaction training makes you blame yourself. You do not say they manipulated me. You say I am too emotional. I should not argue. I need to communicate better. I should keep peace. Self-blame is the final lock of the cage, but the manual has counters, and they begin with awareness of pattern, because nothing loses power faster than something seen clearly. The first counter is emotional tagging. When a reaction happens, do not judge it, label it. Say in your mind, this was guilt response, or this was image defense. The moment you tag the emotion, you move from reactor to observer. The second counter is pattern tracing. Ask yourself, when did I learn to react like this, and who benefits from it? If the benefit is always one-sided, the pattern is not growth, it is training. The third counter is delayed response. Never answer immediately when an emotional button is pushed. Say, I will respond after thinking, or I need time to process. Silence breaks the loop, because loops need instant reaction. The fourth counter is response inversion. Give the opposite reaction of what they expect. If they expect defense, stay silent. If they expect silence, ask for structure. If they expect apology, request evidence. The moment you break predictability, their control loses oxygen. The fifth counter is internal permission. Say internally, I'm allowed to disappoint someone without being wrong. This sentence removes the emotional blackmail that powers reaction training. Reaction training collapses when you prove you are no longer programmable. But there is a deeper twist. Some manipulators do not train you toward a reaction. They train you toward identity confusion. They mix praise and criticism so unpredictably that you cannot form stable self-image. One moment they admire you. The next moment they shame you, and your brain starts searching for the invisible rule you keep breaking. That search never ends, and while you search, they lead. This is called identity scrambling, where you slowly stop trusting your own perception and start depending on theirs. If someone can make you doubt your own internal compass, they never need to win the argument, because you will walk to their conclusion on your own. The antidote is baseline restoration. Write down who you were before the pattern began. List your natural traits, your natural pace, your natural values. Compare the list with who you act like now. The gap is not growth, it is programming. Recover the baseline, and conditioning dissolves. Reaction training is not about one argument. It is about future arguments you will already lose before they start. You cannot fight a battle if your reflexes serve the enemy. But there is still one more layer, the most dangerous one, a move beyond control, beyond conditioning, beyond argument. What happens when the manipulator stops attacking your response and begins rewriting the meaning of reality itself? What happens when language itself becomes the weapon, and truth becomes a negotiable object they can shrink or stretch at will? What happens when they control not just what you think, but what you are allowed to think? Are you ready to face the final move, where truth itself gets edited, and you are forced to live inside their version of reality? Do you know why some arguments feel impossible even when you know the truth? What if the facts are correct, but the reality around them is rewritten? If you want to stay sane, you must protect the meaning of truth itself. The first moves attacked clarity, pace, innocence, and reflex. But the fifth move is different. It does not attack you. It attacks reality while you are still speaking inside it. This move is called narrative rewriting. Narrative rewriting is the silent art of editing meaning after events happen. It does not deny facts. It reshapes context, intention, timeline, and consequence. You are not told you are wrong. You are told the meaning of what happened is different from what you saw. The manipulator does not erase reality. They bend it just enough so you start doubting your own memory. Here is the structure of narrative rewriting. 1. Event happens. 2. You describe the event. 3. They do not dispute the event. They dispute the interpretation. 4. They label your interpretation as emotional, biased, or incomplete. 5. They offer a new version that protects them and weakens you. You start questioning your certainty, not because you are wrong, but because someone confidently offered a smoother story. Example, you say, you raised your voice at me. They reply, I did, because I care more than you do. Example, you say, you ignored what I said. They reply, I paused because your tone was too sharp. Example, you say, you denied what happened yesterday. They reply, I denied it because you misunderstood the whole situation. Notice the pattern. The event is acknowledged, but the motive is rewritten. The blame moves and your observation is turned into a flaw in your perception. Narrative rewriting has 3 tools. Tool 1, emotional reframing. They turn your logical point into emotional overreaction, not by facts but by tone labels like sensitive, dramatic, cold, or uncaring. Tool 2, moral reframing. They shift the argument from what happened to who is the better person. You become the one who overthought, misunderstood, or lacked patience. Tool 3, timeline bending. They change the order of events in the story, so cause becomes effect and effect becomes cause. And now you look unreasonable for reacting. If you accept the rewritten version even once, your memory begins to weaken against their confidence. Your brain starts doubting its own record, and doubt is the perfect soil for control. But the manual has counters, and they require precision, not force. The first counter is timestamp anchoring. When describing an event, attach time, order, and exact phrases. Memory with structure cannot be bent easily. Say at this time, this was said, in this order. The more specific your recall, the harder it is to rewrite. The second counter is motive separation. Always separate action from intention. Say we can discuss why later, but the action itself happened. Forcing action first collapses emotional misdirection. The third counter is playback questioning. Say, repeat what you think I said word for word. If they cannot repeat it accurately, the rewrite is exposed. The fourth counter is parallel record. Write conversations, text summaries, or voice logs. A written timeline defeats memory manipulation because memory can be attacked. Records cannot. The fifth counter is meaning freeze. Say, this is my interpretation, and it will not change without evidence. The sentence draws a boundary around your perception. Reality stays intact even if their story keeps mutating. But narrative rewriting has a darker evolution. When you resist the rewrite, the manipulator may escalate into meta-rewriting, where they redefine what truth itself means. They say things like, truth is different for everyone, perception is reality, facts are cold, intentions matter more, logic is rigid, empathy is deeper than proof. The purpose is not wisdom. The purpose is to remove the ground you stand on, so every future debate happens on soft sand. When truth becomes subjective, control becomes easy because the loudest voice wins, not the most accurate one. The antidote is definition locking. Say, if we cannot agree that reality exists outside emotion, then no discussion can reach resolution. Either truth has a ground or nothing can be measured. Definition locking is not argument. It is the refusal to enter a world where language has no edges. Narrative rewriting is not about winning the current debate. It is about rewriting the past, so future debates start already tilted. But there is one last layer, the final move of psychological control. The move beyond argument, beyond persuasion, beyond logic or emotion. What happens when the manipulator stops rewriting reality and starts shaping your identity around their version of reality? What happens when you become the story they need you to be? What happens when control is no longer external? Because the voice of the manipulator now speaks from inside your own mind. Are you ready to face the final move, where control no longer needs argument, because you begin arguing against yourself? Do you know why you start arguing with yourself long after the manipulator leaves? What if the voice inside your head is no longer fully yours? If you want the final form of freedom, you must see the last disguise of control. Frame seizure steals direction. Pressure stacking steals clarity. Burden shifting steals innocence. Reaction training steals reflex. Narrative rewriting steals reality. But the sixth move steals something deeper. Not your logic, not your memory, but the author of your inner voice. This final move is called identity imprinting. Identity imprinting is the point where external control becomes internal self-policing. The manipulator no longer needs to attack your arguments, because they have already installed a version of you that works in their favor. You become the defender of the very system that drains you. You stop asking, are they right, and start asking, what is wrong with me? Identity imprinting begins when repeated manipulation reshapes 3 core beliefs. 1. Your worth depends on their approval. 2. Your clarity is dangerous if it upsets them. 3. Your peace depends on your silence. Once these 3 beliefs root themselves, your mind becomes self-editing. You no longer need pressure, you self-pressure. You no longer need blame, you self-blame. You no longer need control, you self-limit. The external manipulator becomes internal programming. Identity imprinting works through 4 psychological levers. Lever 1. Selective praise. You are rewarded only when you shrink, soften, agree, or apologize. Your nervous system begins to associate self-suppression with safety. Lever 2. Selective shame. You are criticized only when you assert boundaries, ask for proof, or disagree. Your nervous system begins to associate honesty with danger. Lever 3. Identity labels. You are given vague personality tags like difficult, emotional, overthinking, selfish, cold. These labels become mental cages that shape future behavior. Lever 4. Isolated reflection. You are encouraged to think about your behavior alone, which leads to guilt loops with no external correction. The sentence inside. Your head changes from "they are manipulating me" to "maybe I really am the problem." That is the victory point for the manipulator identity. Imprinting creates 4 internal voices: the self-critic, who attacks your thoughts before anyone else can; the self-doubter, who questions every instinct you have; the self-judge, who measures your worth through other people's comfort; the self-silencer, who shuts your voice down to prevent conflict. Once these 4 voices exist, psychological control is automated. You no longer argue to defend truth. You argue to avoid guilt. You no longer speak to express clarity. You speak to prevent rejection. You no longer set boundaries for protection. You feel selfish for even needing boundaries. This is not persuasion. This is identity editing, but the manual has a way out. Because identity imprinting is not permanent, it can be reversed the same way it was installed, through repetition and clarity. There are 4 counters, 1 for each internal voice. Counter 1, neutral observation. Whenever the self-critic speaks, do not argue with it, label it. Say in your mind, "This is not me. This is the trained voice." Naming the voice separates you from it. Counter 2, baseline restoration. Write down who you were before the pattern. Your natural tone, your natural level of calm, your natural sense of fairness. Compare that version with the person you act like now. The difference is not growth, it is programming. You cannot return to power until you see the gap. Counter 3, permission override. Say internally, "I am allowed to disagree without being wrong. I am allowed to be firm. Without being cruel, I am allowed to upset someone without being broken." These sentences break the link between peace and silence. Counter 4, identity reclamation. Replace labels you were given with labels you choose. Not emotional, but aware. Not stubborn, but principled. Not cold, but measured. Identity is not what others assign. Identity is what you define with consistency. Identity. Imprinting collapses the moment you stop fighting the manipulator and start fighting the false version of yourself they installed. Once you regain authorship of your inner voice, the entire system loses its fuel. Because here is the truth. The manipulator never wants you to realize. They do not win when you lose the argument. They win when you lose yourself. They do not want silence. They want self-silencing. They do not want obedience. They want obedience that feels like self-choice. They do not want your mind. They want your identity to align with their benefit. But the moment you recognize every move, frame seizure, pressure stacking, burden shifting, reaction training, narrative rewriting, identity imprinting, their power collapses. Because the strongest manipulation is the one you never see. Now you see it, and once seen, it cannot return to invisibility. So the final question is, not how do you defeat them, but how do you stay unprogrammable? The answer is simple, but not easy. Never let someone else decide what clarity feels like inside your mind. Because the real battlefield was never the argument. It was always the author of your thoughts. And the author is now you.